Today, we're diving into the mind of one of architecture's most legendary figures, Zaha Hadid. We're going to break down her systematic genius and what we're calling the Hadid Equation, a philosophy that was truly designed to curve the world into the future. Let's get into it.
So picture this. The year is 1994.
We're in a world of architecture that is just dominated by right angles. A world of boxes, really. And Zaha Hadid, this Iraqi-British architect with a vision that was, well, completely radical, she wins the international competition for the Cardiff Opera House. I mean, after years of being an outsider, this was a huge, huge victory. Her design wasn't just a building, it was this cascade of fluid, interlocking forms. It looked more like something that grew out of the earth than something that was built. This should have been the moment she arrived. So to understand how that massive win turned into the defining fight of her life, here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start right there in Cardiff with the rejection, go back to her origins, define the equation she built her career on, look at the system that made it all work, see how she became a global icon, and then finally pull out the lesson she left for all of us.
Okay, so let's go right back to Cardiff. You have to understand, this wasn't just any project. This was the project. The one that was supposed to prove that her wild ideas weren't just possible, but that they were absolutely necessary. But what happened next? Well, it forged her entire philosophy.
That's right, her winning design was never built. The whole project was just canceled. Even though she beat the most established architects on the planet, her vision was called too radical, too challenging, too, well, different. The establishment just couldn't handle it, so they pulled the plug. And for Hadid, this was way more than just a job falling through. It felt like a deep, profound injustice.
And this right here, this is the question that would basically drive the rest of her life. How can you win, officially, on paper, and still lose? What is it really that gets in the way of true innovation? And this is the conclusion she came to. It wasn't about engineering challenges, it wasn't about the cost. She realized the biggest barrier was simply fear. You know, the fear of anything new, of anything that breaks the mold. And in that moment of rejection, she made a promise to herself. She would be uncompromising. From that day forward, her philosophy was forged right there. She decided she would dedicate her entire career to systematically replacing the straight line with the curve, and she would force the world to catch up. And that was the beginning of the Hadid Equation. Now, that kind of defiant spirit doesn't just pop up overnight. To really get where her iron will came from, we've got to rewind a bit to the years before Cardiff. This was her time in the professional wilderness, and it's where her genius was really forged. 16! I mean, just let that number sink in. For 16 years after starting her own firm, almost none of her designs were actually built. Despite all her talent, all her groundbreaking ideas, she was just out there, on her own. Can you imagine the sheer will it takes to keep a vision like that alive for so long, with basically no one telling you you're on the right track?
And this is what they called her, a paper architect. And believe me, it was not a compliment. It was their way of saying her work was just fantasy, that it belonged in a museum, not in the real world. But here's the ironic thing. That insult, that trauma, it's exactly what made her so strong. It forced her to be completely uncompromising. She knew she couldn't just water down her ideas to get a building made. She had to wait for technology, and honestly, the world, to finally catch up with her. And here's the secret ingredient to all of this. Her foundation wasn't just in art, it was in mathematics. Before she ever touched architecture, she studied math. And this is so key. It taught her to see the world not as a bunch of static things, but as a series of fluid, geometric systems that could be solved. For her, the curve wasn't just a pretty shape. It was a mathematical inevitability.
So, you take that foundation in math, you add that defiant resilience, and what you get is a systematic philosophy for changing the world. This is the heart of it all, the Hadid Equation, and it's built on three main pillars.
This comparison really says it all, doesn't it? On one side, you have conventional architecture, static, rigid, rectangular. It's the world of the box. And on the other side, you have the Hadid Equation, dynamic, fluid, curved. This isn't just a different style. It's a vision for a world that actually reflects the complexity and the motion of our lives. She wasn't just designing buildings. She was trying to design a new reality.
So, pillar number one is what we're calling the fluid dynamics mandate. The basic idea is that a Hadid building should never ever just sit there. It has to feel like it's in motion, like it's flowing, or like it grew right out of the ground. It's all about capturing the chaotic, fluid energy of modern life in steel and glass.
Pillar number two is her intellectual method. the Abstraction and Fragmentation Protocol. Think of it like this. She would take the basic parts of a building, walls, floors, roofs, and mentally shatter them into pieces. Then she'd reassemble them in a totally new, mind-bending way. That's how she created those incredibly complex spaces that feel both massive and completely weightless at the very same time.
And finally, Pillar 3, technology-driven execution. Okay, this is the one that made it all possible. Hadid was a huge champion of something called parametricism. It's a fancy word, but basically it means using powerful computer algorithms to generate architectural forms, not just draw them. And for her, this wasn't just some cool new tech toy. It was an absolute necessity. It was the only tool powerful enough to translate the crazy complex curves in her mind into something that could actually be built. Technology was the bridge from her imagination to our reality.
So we've got the philosophy, right? But how did she actually make it happen day to day? Let's look at the actual system she used to turn that abstract genius into something real, something with digital rigor.
What's so fascinating is her workflow was this two-part engine. It always started with step 1, painting. Seriously, long before a computer was turned on, she would explore ideas through these incredible abstract paintings. This let her think about space without worrying about boring things like gravity or building codes. Only after that abstract vision was locked in did she move to step 2, the digital loop. That's when her team would take those wild, fluid paintings and use computational geometry to translate them into precise, buildable structures. It was this perfect blend of artistic freedom and hardcore tech.
So, she had her equation, she had her system, and finally, the world started to catch up. The so-called paper architect was about to start building an empire. And the story shifts from this epic struggle to an epic triumph. In 2004, and get this, it was almost exactly a decade after the Cardiff rejection, this happened. She became the first woman ever to win the Pritzker Prize. That's like the Nobel Prize for Architecture. This wasn't just another award. This was a global validation of her entire life's work. It was the ultimate vindication.
And just like that, everything changed. That insulting label that had followed her for years, it was gone, forever. She was no longer the outsider begging for a chance to build. She was now a global cultural titan, and the world was begging her.
And what followed was just an explosion of creativity. The Pritzker opened the floodgates. Suddenly, her buildings are popping up everywhere. The Fano Science Center in Germany, it literally looks like a spaceship landed. The Guangzhou Opera House in China, looking like 2 giant smooth river pebbles. The London Aquatic Center for the Olympics, with its magnificent flowing wave of a roof. And maybe the purest expression of her vision, the Heydar Aliyev Center in Azerbaijan, is just this one single, continuous surface that flows from the ground into the building and back again. She wasn't just drawing the future anymore, she was building it.
So when it's all said and done, what is the ultimate legacy of Zaha Hadid? What's the real lesson we can take away from her incredible journey? Because it's about so much more than just buildings. This is really the heart of it all. Her legacy is built on this one profound idea, that architecture should represent the complexity of life itself. She believed the simple rectangular box was basically a lie. It doesn't reflect how dynamic and chaotic and fluid our lives really are. Her entire life's work was a quest to create a new language for architecture that could honestly show us that beautiful complexity.
And because of that, the Hadid equation really becomes a blueprint for any innovator, no matter what field you're in. First, defy the mediocrity of the straight line. The easy, boring, conventional answer. Second, break down the assumptions in your own field. Question everything. And third, use math, use technology, use whatever tools you can to make your radical vision real.
And that's the final, powerful takeaway. It doesn't matter if you're in architecture, tech, or business. Her story proves that real progress doesn't come from compromising. It comes from having a vision so powerful and a system so rigorous that you actually force the world to bend to it. The future isn't going to be built in straight lines. It lies in the courage, the genius, and the systematic mastery of the non-rectangular.